All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm your host, Nika Cherrelles, and this is the It Cast, Real Talk. The It Cast is our community outreach podcast that aims to increase diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we are creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. Please visit us on Patreon to support the ItCast and learn more about our work at theitcast.com. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel and please share with your community. I want to thank everyone out there who has subscribed to our YouTube channel. We're reaching more and more communities, and we have a goal of reaching 125 communities this summer. So please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and please share. This episode is Real Talk on Gun Violence. Our guest today is Pat Gimeno of Holistic Love Neighborhood. Patrick is an occupational therapist, fitness enthusiast, and avid Latin dancer, plays basketball, and he is the founder and CEO of Holistic Neighborhood. For over a decade, he's helped thousands of people discover their self-love, health, and wellness in all areas of life. Patrick, please join us on the show. Hey, Patrick. Oh, you're on mute.
There you go. Hi, how's it going?
It's amazing. It's so good to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Yes. So before we dive into the conversation, can you please tell our the people out here with us, our listeners, our watchers, a little bit about yourself, your cultural background, and anything that they might want to know to be related?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm Pat and I'm Filipino, and I'm a proud American. Yeah, I've gone through a lot of things in my life. I think one of the things is that when I was a teenager, I almost committed suicide. I had a lot of mental health problems when I was younger, and then for the next 10 years, in my 20s, I really sought out to really improve myself and my life so that people wouldn't have to feel the suffering of mental health issues anymore. And our mental health is a very holistic thing. It's comprised of lots of different things in our life, which helped me discover the idea of Holistic Love Neighborhood, which is communities of of health and communities that really support each other in creating positive, healthy habits for themselves and their lives in all areas of life. And so I'm just really glad to be here with just kind of the breadth of experiences over time. I am a fitness instructor and an avid Latin dancer, so I like to shimmy and shake and do all that stuff. And I've found that really supportive community is really the way to go in really creating not only healthy habits and healthy life, but also changing the narrative and also the mindsets of people from that of resentment, anger, fear, to that of love, abundance, and a creative life. So I'm really glad to be here and really share not only the experiences today, which I'm really happy and excited to be sharing my insights with gun violence and kind of our take on it. And also just being able to share my message of Holistic Love Neighborhood and what we're about.
Yeah. Absolutely. You said anger, fear, and there was another one in there, just like
Resentment. Yeah,
resentment. Yes, resentment, anger, and fear. Looking at gun violence, I think that those are the top three that I look at, especially fear when it comes to the shootings, the need to own the guns, all these other things. And so I love that we're having this conversation. It ties deeply into a lot of the work that I do around ending gun violence and ending shame and like the things that kind of push us to those isolated edges. So I'm really grateful for your work and the conversations you're creating in the world, especially around mental health. So let's talk about let's put some context on this. When we're talking about gun violence, we're actually specifically talking about some of the mass shootings that have happened in the last couple of decades
absolutely.
and what has motivated those shootings. So please share with us a little bit about, like what you've seen and some of the particular stories you want to talk to us about.
Absolutely. And today we're going to be sharing a couple of different examples from different shootings that have occurred in the past couple of decades. And really, first, it absolutely is a tragedy, and it's definitely an epidemic out there. That the way that people choose. Now, here's the thing, like, yeah, back in the 1700s, like we were given the right to bear arms, right? And to actually have this have guns be prevalent in our society. And now it's being used as a way to quote unquote cope with like different mental issues, that people have, is that they feel like they need to shoot guns. Now, shooting guns as a hobby is fine, but when it's used on people, when it's used to get back and use, fear, resentment, and all, and anger towards other human beings, that's when we have a tremendous problem. And so a lot of different stories come to mind in terms of like what has happened. Now it affects everyone, not only just the victims and the people who have died, and also their families, and also the community at large. But I also wanted to talk about to the people that have actually created these shootings. What did it take for them to get from one place where they couldn't handle their mental health to a place of wanting to use semi-automatic weapons to actually like destroy human life? And so we do have a couple of different shootings I do want to highlight. One of the, a couple of them, like the Virginia Tech shooting back then, the Columbine shooting. We also have the Orlando nightclub shooting, of course, more recently, the Atlanta spa shootings, and then also right here in the Bay Area, the San Jose BTA shootings that happened. And so I think I want to start with the one that really hits home for me, because I really connect with this person a lot, and it's really the Virginia Tech shooting. So that was something that occurred in 2007, and it was two attacks on Virginia Tech's university and the state university, and it's this person named Sung Yu Cho, and really he killed 32 people and wounded 17. And what was remarkable about it is that he went through a ton of just like, a ton of depression. He had also intellectual disabilities, and the way that it came about was that he had this romantic fantasy that basic a romantic fantasy that he had with one of the students, which perpetuated this shooting, because they actually found out that he never ever made contact with this person. And he was creating all these fantasies about how they were going to be together, and then that fantasy turned into resentment and anger when he knew that it wasn't going to happen. And so it was just really remarkable to see like how something that didn't even occur in reality actually like perpetuated all this fear and resentment internally. And so from birth and from the age of 3 onwards, like this has been building up over time. And even I was looking at one of the roommates that he was with during in the college campus, and he's like, I wish I could have done something. I didn't even know that this was boiling inside of him. So there was a lack of communication from his part about what he was going through. And how is it that a lot of these shootings end up being because that person didn't have a supportive community or somebody to reach out to and talk to you, that they felt that this was a journey that they had alone. And unfortunately for this situation, like it really perpetuated like the fear and all the sexual shame and and all the things that were boiling inside of them, unfortunately, came out in this way. So
Yeah.
that's one of the first ones I wanted to like, highlight, because it really hits home, because I also went through a lot of um, inabilities to really express, my sexual desires and fantasies. I know this hits home for you, Nika, too, is that like when we're not able to express our sexual desires and our sexual wants, that can come out in really negative ways, and just really destructive ways. So I wanted to, yeah,
Yeah.
talk to you about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I really love that you bring this up because when we talk about shame, one of the things that gets lost is the conversation around isolation. And when you're feeling ashamed about something or you're being shamed for something, it's very easy to lose community and retreat. I know for myself personally, um, the conversation around not being able to express yourself sexually or just even having self-expression or to be able to talk about your needs is one of the things that definitely drives people into conversations around abuse, being abusive, being resentful, being frustrated, um, and to not have a space to be able to communicate that. So, just looking at like shame alone could drive someone to those levels of depth and isolation. And especially when you add mental health on top of it. I'm an avid believer in having a good mental health structure, a system, no matter what you're going through, where you're at. And it like this is one of those things that was preventable. Not only was it a mass shooting but also suicide as well, and so you could tell this person was at the end of their rope, like there was no hope left.
Yeah, and he had very similar symptoms to what I had when I was younger. Severe, I mean, we all go through a spectrum of this, but severe depression, anxiety, and then also like he had therapy, but then he stopped therapy because he felt like, he didn't really need it.
Hmm.
And he was ostracized. He was bullied when he was in middle school. I was bullied when I was in middle school, and I just remember how isolating that could feel for someone. And I started having resentment, not only towards other people but myself. Like it was just just a really bad space of hate for other people that got now. With that, like therapy and supportive groups and a couple angels really helped me sort through those feelings, and that's why I don't have any of those tendencies to want to act on it. But for somebody that has no, doesn't choose to have that support around him, or doesn't have somebody want to actually like reach out to him, then that's what can happen.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. um and speaking to the spectrum, around mental health, depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, like this happens a lot in the space of like youth and pubescence, and it can carry into adulthood when not helped. I know for myself, I dealt with that as well. Like I dealt with being bullied. I dealt with thoughts of suicide, and attempts. So I get it. I really get that. um yeah, please continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like there were reports of Cho actually stalking, and harassing students, and also like he's been declared mentally ill, so he tried to, he was ordered to seek out treatment, but he really didn't wasn't really obedient on that part, and basically he committed suicide. And I don't know if people remember, but like 15 years ago there were tapes that were released that had him actually talking to the camera, saying, "You forced me into a corner. You gave me only one option. You just loved to crucify me. You loved inducing cancer in my head, terror in my heart, and ripping my soul at all this time." And that is just heartbreaking, to see all this stuff. Now he said this afterward. I mean, they got the tapes afterwards and then they showed this. I think there would have been a difference if there was somebody like right beside him actually telling this to somebody, because I know I have these kinds of thoughts sometimes too. I'm sure that everybody at some point has these really negative, hard thoughts that they just need to get out to someone. And then because he just did it behind a camera, he had no one to give him feedback, no one to give him a hug, no one to do that. And I think a lot of these things, in which we'll talk more about later, can be really, it just takes one person with one smile, with one hug, with one listening and not judging, that can really make the difference in people's lives, and we could have prevented, these 10 fatalities that have happened, and many more probably that were subsequent, because sometimes these mass shootings, they're like, oh, that person did it, maybe that's the way that I should do it too, and so one perpetuates the other, and then they're like, okay, well, now we're creating a frenzy of these, which we've seen a uptake in mass shootings in the past couple years now. They've skyrocketed, and it's just because people are engaging in it. And I think there's not one week where I don't hear about somebody getting killed by a gun or something like that in the
Yeah.
news systems. Like every week there's something new,
It's absolutely a trend, and it's trending upwards, I think, especially in the US. Um, one of the things you pointed out about being angry, like being so angry, it reminds me of the thought, like, if looks could kill, we all get angry at times. We all get angry. We all have those moments, and it we forget how powerful we actually are. Like, to be able to stop and to think about how my anger might be hurting someone else, or how it could lead to hurting someone else, is a really good step in the process. Um, and so to be able to let go of anger and to not carry things with us, like you said, to even have a sounding board to give us perspective. It's a little bit of perspective.
Absolutely, and so like for just knowing that, yeah, and this is what we're, you and I, like, we're so great at creating community around us, and people, surrounding ourselves with people that really want to listen to people and what they have to say, and really start that healing process, because it starts with one person talking to another person.
Mhm.
And that'll start the ball rolling. I mean, you can try to do all the self-improvement, self-help things in the world, but you have to have a motivation to change, and you have to reach out, and that's really the first step. And sometimes we have to reach out to that person, so the person that you might be flaking off unintentionally, or maybe the way that you are is not allowing people to also express themselves around you. Like, be the one that actually reaches out and say, how are you doing, and I'm here to listen to you, how's your day, and really just listen to them. No judgment, and because everybody's emotions are valid. They get, even these shooters, they got to that point because of lots of things that have happened to them in the past that have led them to that point. And if they hear another person that says you are wrong and you suck and you shouldn't think that way, that's just going to perpetuate like a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the beauty of mental health, is because it's designed to be a space without judgment. Whereas, like, trying to get that type of therapy or conversation from your friends or your family, it can be more damaging.
Yeah, so definitely, like, for those people, like, fighting specialists, fighting a community that have trained individuals that are able to take this on. Now, I mean, you as a friend can do a lot, um, just by listening. And at the same time, if you really see somebody like that is in that kind of state where they're just resenting people, and nothing seems to be right, and they feel like they're losing control, like, really, for their sake, you can reach out for them to people that are specialists,
Mhm.
and because, like, I've had a couple incidences in the past where I've had to refer somebody to, a professional, and there's something that are just out of the scope of my knowledge and practice.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. What it brought up for me is, like, judgments is a way of shaming, and like shame-based teaching and practices like that. And what I just got from your share is that when you're at a point where you want to judge someone for their behavior, maybe actually like assisting them in seeking to get help. Um, yeah, because it's, yeah. it's really easy to like get to that place where like that person's wrong for what they did, and to not look at like, well, what's behind that? What's behind that? And how are we culturally perpetuating this conversation? Um, yeah.
Absolutely. And
So
so,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, no, 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 no. I was just saying I wanted to highlight a couple other like shootings as well. But if you have something that you want to talk about right
No,
now.
I was going to ask you about the next shooting.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to kind of go even more backwards. To Columbine shooting, in which occurred in 1999. Everybody, it was like a national news way back when, and a couple of 12th graders murdered 12 students and one teacher, and a lot of people, and it was the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history. And what I can see from that, because I'm not going to go into the whole history behind it and all the details, but what I will say is that a lot of this was perpetuated because of the type of environment that they surrounded, the type of activities that they did. Like they wrote journals that had like um, that had them playing like Doom and all these like violent video games, and also like they were just mentioning and talking and also like journaling about like how they wanted to go on killing sprees and things like that. And they were looking up violence and terrorism. And it's just, I think really this is a case of the environment that you surround the kid with and the things that you give them to learn, like, can perpetuate itself into something like that. And I know this can also raise an issue about how in the 90s there was a lot of violent video games and lots of different things that were deemed as like, hey, you know what, this could happen to a kid if they look at something on the screen and they shoot something on the screen, that they think it's okay to do it in real life, and it's no big deal.
Yeah,
But obviously this was a lot more than that. I mean, anything else, any kind of shooting has an air of anger, resentment, and hate towards people. um
absolutely. And, you know, this one I think is uniquely special in like pointing a lens on our culture in American society. Like, we idealize guns and gun culture and the right to own guns. We also idealize the serial killer narrative or the mass murderer narrative. So there was a conversation for them that they were going to like have the biggest like, you know, the biggest mass murder since the what was the Oklahoma bombing or something.
yeah,
And
exactly.
they like, there was a celebrity, there was a gravitas to their intention as well. And there's something about the way that we hold people in the community and the way that we some serial killers get more documentaries and more respect than activists do. And it's like, where are we focusing our attention from a cultural lens? Yes, there's violence, but also like the motivation to be seen, be heard, um, all the other things. So and
Mhm.
also you bring up Columbine, and like it hits me in that space of also what was the impact following that. I think that that sparked a trend around the mass shootings and the mass murders. And there's also the impact of like what it did in schools, what it did in families, like the fear that this could happen. It was an attack on our values, um, which I think is also really intense. Anyway, I could run my mouth all
Oh no, yeah. And
day.
so he was diagnosed as a clinical psychopath, very depressive. And going back to the mental health issue of this, there was something that I read too that was just like, there was a prevalent theme in the journals, as is what he had wished for suicide, and there was private despair and lack of success with women, again, which is another theme that happens again, and it's an infinite sadness. And I was just like, wow, like, I mean, we do know that like dating is not easy in life, and it's really finding the right partner. And then we can go into a whole nother topic about divorce and the way that our dating culture is now. But
Mhm.
I'm just saying a lot of the motivations can be stemmed from just really not knowing how to deal with emotions, and also like in a culture that is very rejection prone and like we are a lot more defensive, which may come out as like really hardcore rejection towards these people, and then they use that as a motivation to to hurt people. um And so like going back to what we were talking about with Cho and Virginia Tech, it was just like having a community and people to listen to you. And then also, as part of also my organization is not only do we want to listen to you, but we want to also give you the tools. And how many times in school we don't actually learn about emotional intelligence. We don't learn how to properly have have proper social skills, or a lot of the root of all evil is like money, and we don't have financial classes, that teach people how to deal with their money correctly. So a lot of these things, because they have no control over some of these things, and they don't have any empowerment or any skills that they can learn, will perpetuate all these mental health issues, the depression, the anxiety, the things. That's all because of a lack of knowledge, a lack of not being able to control their circumstance.
Absolutely. And, like what we might perceive as criminal behavior. So you talked about the money, and I know that's not necessarily the focus of what we're talking about, but not having like skills around your finances can lead people to things like shoplifting and like other survival based instincts. And it's like, what's the motivation behind any criminal behavior? I also think you made an excellent point around social interaction and those skills. So I think about like communication, the ability to share what you like, what your needs are. But like in school growing up, like our social interaction was don't beat each other, like don't fight.
Yeah, exactly. Don't
Like
fight.
if we can keep you from fighting and ripping each other apart, then we're winning. And like bullying was everywhere, and children weren't taught the social skills of like nicety. And like, yes, I learned being polite, but that's very different than actually like the skills of like learning the value of your classmates and things of that nature. um
Yeah.
it was
And,
very survival. Go
and
ahead.
yeah, and I was bullied when I was a kid. I switched schools a couple times, and I was the kid that had no friends. I was the kid that had three people, like, without the teachers knowing. And I swear, like, how do teachers not pick up on certain things, um but that is kind of my story, in the things that I went through. Like, it went on way too long, for them to be able to pick on, like, because here's the thing, we don't teach our kids how to express that. So when
Mm.
I went through my bullying, like, I was taught to just keep it to myself. Like, if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't want to rat out kids. If you rat out kids, then you're gonna be that person that snitch.
Snitch
Um,
get stitches. I'm
Snitch
sorry.
gets stitches. And that's a very toxic type of mental state.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing is, it's like when a person is getting abused, or a person is not in the normal realm of like how kids should interact with each other. I mean, kids can be so cruel, and the thing is, they're not doing it because um, they intend to hurt the person, but that's what they've been taught, over and over again. And so
Right.
when it happened to me, it was really tough because I took such a big mental hit. Like, and it took years for me to not only like forgive those people, but to actually create friendships for myself. I don't think it was until fifth or sixth grade. I got into a new school, and when I was second grade, and I had three bullies, that behind my back, would do things to me, and then just curse me out, and then tell other kids that to not play with him, all these different things that have happened. And then a couple years of therapy and other things that really helped me get out of that. But that's really huge, is that we don't really have a way. And this is why like anti-bullying was such a big thing, a couple, and now it's cyberbullying, and lots of other things. But really having the awareness, and really educating teachers and staff to really recognize those things and be able to nip it at the butt
Mhm.
before it has long lasting effects on kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think as you were sharing, the words that came up were like emotional toxicity. It's like not being able to process and be with your emotions in a healthy way. That's where I think a lot of bullying comes from, because like you said, the kids aren't intentionally hurting the other children. It's like how else do they express their emotions?
Yeah.
How else do they express their hurt, their anger? And to have instructors and teachers being trauma informed, like what does trauma look like? What does bullying look like? What are these things, and how can you spot them in a way where it might be subtle? I think that, one of the things I see is that some institutions are getting there. Some institutions are taking the time to like learn these things, talk about these things, teach these things. And I still think we're probably a long way off.
Yeah, and it goes back to our whole focus, which is like not only the victim like me, right? But what happened to those kids, you know? Like do they have an abusive parent that has alcohol in their system, you know? Or abusing drugs, or maybe they don't have a great relationship with their families, so that's why they're lashing out at their kids. And now the kid feels angry, the kid feels like sad. Where do they direct that? They can't direct it back to their parents because then they'll get a beating or there'll be something that happens to them. So where do they direct it? To their school environment, you know, to the kids and the relationships that they form over there. They feel like that could be a sense of control for them. It's like, I can't control my parent, what they do, but I can sure as control this little kid, that I can take his lunch money, and that'll make me feel, at least it actually releases endorphins, you know, because now they feel they're in control, and because you have control, like there's a sense of comfort with that, you know, in bullying, unfortunately.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
lots of things to say about that. Yeah, but those are really the things that I really see, and kind of in reflection of what my past, which also brings a tear to my face, because that's a lot of the source of why I almost committed suicide, and why I have a lot of the mental health issues that I've had to learn coping skills over time, because some mornings I wake up and that comes into my head, you know. So it's important to really just be able to express that. And unfortunately, I have people like Nika, like other people that I can express these things to. Otherwise, it would be just really toxic for me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, looking at the conversation around toxicity, um, there's also the aspect of like, you, sorry, you mentioned like keep it to yourself, don't tell anybody. And I feel like that's something that, boys are taught. Like, this is how you be a man. This is how like, oh, this is how you do what you need to do to like look and be a certain way. And I really think that that perpetuates a lot of negativity in the gender conversation. um I don't know that little girls get taught like suck it up. I don't think we got that.
You're a pussy, you know, like you're a cunt, like all these different things to say how, like how is it being weak to be feminine, like why does that have a connotation?
And why is it even considered feminine to express emotion?
Yeah, exactly. Why can't it be also masculine to express emotion?
Yeah.
I actually, and this is kind of a little off topic, but I had a sex therapist that I saw for a while, and he's like, Pat, like it's actually extremely attractive and sexy to express your emotions as a man, because that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That really doesn't happen, and then women are, and partners are attracted to this essence of like, ooh, he's mysterious because he doesn't seem like he's sad or happy, and that's alluring. Now that's really toxic, because now you're shaming people, men that express their emotions, because that is seen as feminine or weak.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother topic we could also cover. We're just bringing all these topics, but I definitely can talk a lot about that, and how
Absolutely.
that has impacted me, and also millions of people around the world when they choose to take on a masculine energy or persona. Yeah.
Yes, yes. It's like you can't be emotionally expressed or
You have to
mature.
be strong. You have to be like a post. You have to be like in the eye of the storm. Nothing can shake you. But what happens is that you're dying inside, actually,
Exactly.
because you're not able to express these things. And the really the bright side of it is that, that therapist also told me, is like, that is one of the most endearing, amazing qualities about you,
Mhm.
and the world is not ready for it yet.
Yeah.
But when the world is, just get ready, the people will be lining up for you. So like, and so that's something that also kind of personally in my heart makes me feel really good, because it knows that what I'm doing is right, is that a person that wants to accept me will accept me from the emotions that I love to express, and that knowing that that's a healthy way to be in a relationship with someone. Yeah.
Yes. This is phenomenal. So let's go
Yeah,
ahead and
absolutely.
discuss the next shooting. So I know we've got a couple more.
Yeah, which one do you want to do? We'll pick another one.
I honestly I'm like, I want to talk about Atlanta because
Okay, yeah, let's talk about
everything that we've been discussing so far kind of leads up to that conversation around and in no way blaming the victims, but looking at the conversation around sexual shaming and the conversations around like putting
yeah.
someone in a position where they can't or they don't feel like they can actually express themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, this happened back in March, and it occurred in 3 spas in the area of Atlanta, and it was this person named Robert Long, and he was motivated by sexual addiction and also religion, so being at odds with Christianity. uh,
Religious shame,
so
you know.
religious shame, it's like, I was born a really strict Catholic. Sex before marriage, no. Like, being able to, like, express your sexuality is somewhat, um what is the word, oppressed, no. It's not looked upon in a great light in Christianity, like, you don't see in the Bible. I mean, they always refer to it as sin, right? Like, when you engage in your sexual desires, when you do stuff out of marriage, then it's a sin and it's wrong, you know and so there's a lot of stuff with that I'm sure that he was going through, because Christianity has this whole thing about, like, if you do anything outside of marriage, or masturbation or whatever, then it is shameful, if you want a long and then temptation. And so what he was doing was, all the shame was building up, and he was trying to get rid of the temptations. And in this instance, it was Asian women at spas.
Yeah, yeah. And like, not to say that these activities were happening in these spas, but like that was the temptation that he dealt with, and the shame around sexuality. It's like, if he'd grown up in a different cultural environment, this might have just been considered a healthy sex drive. And the shaming around it, I think, is what puts it into the box where the violence and the temptation and the fear have to come out. I was raised Baptist Christian in Missouri, and it was strange to have these conversations, like, like every single week we go to church and we'd hear how bad and wrong we are and how sinful things, like things that are natural to our biology actually are. And I know it did a number on me. Like, it did a number on me personally, in terms of like discovering and being okay with my own sexuality and my own personal identity, and to be okay with religion again, to be able to be in a space with religion where I don't feel shameful or afraid or wrong about something. Um, and I see so many people, like, this is an example of someone who did not get out of that, conversation.
Yeah, and I just want to note is that it did really raise the issue of anti-Asian violence, in culture. And at the same time, we want to just make the distinction that it's actually not about that. At the same time, like, we're all for, anti-Asian violence, and that's really great that it brought it up. But just to know that, like, there are so many factors. I mean, here's the thing: it can be racially biased, yeah. And definitely a lot of shootings are about kind of racial tensions, and have happened a lot over time. And at the same time, we have to remember that every single shooting is multi-dimensional. It's not just one thing that causes this. It's multiple things. And so it's really great, like I said, anti-Asian violence, that's really amazing. And at the same time, like, we're talking really about religion and sexual shame right here, for this one. And so I don't really have anything else to really say about this one, but I will say that Yeah, I mean, just like sexual addiction is a real big thing, you know, and I know like the way that, and this is really great for you, Nika, because your whole organization is about sexual freedom and sexual expression. And what type of education and resources do we have out there in the world
Mhm.
that actually deals with sexual addiction, you know? That actually takes, so I mean, if this person like could find a place where he could express those desires freely, and knowing that no matter what religion you're a part of or whatever, that it's okay to be free and happy and to be able to express these desires, you know, in a healthy way. And I know, you know, for me too, and I can open up too, for many years I had a porn addiction, you know. This year has been a lot different, you know. I've been sober for a little while now, and I'm just really happy about that. But what does porn teach you? It teaches you that you can get it any time, that you can get whatever fantasy you want out there. And once you go to reality, right, and then that's really not the case, it is almost like a contradiction in your brain, you know.
Yeah.
You're like, how did was I able to get it all the time? And then, well, you didn't really get it, you just like were seeing pictures and images of people doing that. And I think a lot of people that do have religious backgrounds where they are shameful, you'll see a lot more sex addiction in those types of cultures, you know. Not to say that I have an official stat on that, but I'm just saying that when you suppress something so much, that can come out in different ways. It can come out as violence, it can
Yeah.
come out as sexual addiction. And there's still a lot of shame in our culture about wanting to express your sexuality.
Yeah.
Fortunately, like with your organization, and I know another organization called For Love, my friend Misha, that really works on like, hey, you know what, your sexual expression is a birthright, you know, and it is worth exploring and having a space where people can celebrate you for those things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love what you said around around there being more instances of sexual addiction in these really rigid religious communities. It's about like, and I don't have the stats on this either, but when you deny something, when you deny yourself something, or when something is denied from someone, they want it that much more, that much more. And then it comes out, and you know, you talked about and talked about violence, but also looking at gender-based violence, looking at, you know, homophobia, looking at, I hate to say, but like pedophilia, things of that nature, where it's like when you're so restricted that it lashes out, it's such a bad concoction of circumstance, like the perfect storm. Um, you know, and on the conversation of the shooting, I mean, I guess I'm like, do I have something on the shooting specifically? It is about the conversation around religious shaming, sexual shaming, and it does open up the conversation around like targeted race-based hate. When we look at like hate, though, it's like, yes, anti-Asian hate, Black Lives Matter, it's like all these things. Like, why can't we just stop conversations around hate all across the board, like all across the board?
Yeah.
um
And there's something I wanted to add to that was, and I was thinking about when you said pedophile, actually, is that they actually air shows that really demonize all these people that come in, and they target underage people, you know, and have sex with them. Not to say that that isn't by any means like okay. And at the same time, we're looking at really demonizing and really just like seeing this person as a bad person, you know. And when in reality, they have really they just have a really difficult time expressing their sexual desires in a healthy way. There's no outlet for this. And so what happens is they do it, you know, and then they
mhm.
get caught for it. And then national media sensationalizes this whole story. And then next thing you know, this person is just like, he is actually being judged. He's actually being, you know, um, he's not getting the proper support around this, you know, that he
Yeah.
needs. And this is where we go about again, like, yeah, we focus on the victims, and the victims, I mean, definitely, but we're not focusing also like what are the causes for this person and how can we support that person in their journey as well.
Right. And I love what you're pointing to, because it's like the nature of these things is not going to go away unless we actually address the cause. It's like these people in these circumstances are the symptom of a greater cause, which says
Yeah.
sex is bad, wrong, don't do it. And then when your urges are there, they bubble up to the surface, you're like, it's harder to control them.
Yeah. And
Um,
they're judged. And then they're judged, on the TV shows. They're like, why did you do this? What had you doing this? Like, everything like that. And there's like, and making them wrong for what they feel rather than, just, calling them out on the actual like act,
and
there's
create.
nothing wrong with their feeling, there is something wrong with the act of, they choose to act on it in that way. Yeah. Because the way that their feelings are is subject from like all these past events that they've gone through and the traumas that have been unresolved and have not been properly processed.
Right. And to be able to create the healthier emotional and mental experience such that the physical ramifications don't occur.
Yeah. And last thing I wanted to say about that is like, what if we were to take one of those people and say, like, what are you actually feeling? And then they say, like, I actually feel like sleeping with a 13-year-old girl. And this is a really bad urge for me. And I know it's wrong. And I just feel like I have to do it. And then somebody, instead of like, saying this is wrong, you shouldn't do it, whatever, saying, I see how you feel this way, and actually listen to them and say, hey, and acknowledge that this is a journey for them. So before they ever, act on it or create violence around it, there's somebody that can intercept them right away and then start to really work through those feelings and allow them to feel those feelings.
Yeah. And the thing is, our culture is not set up for anyone to actually say that or anything like that. Such that it gets, that it's addressed before it causes harm. I mean, there are many people who don't see the wrong in that. And also, this conversation is not about pedophilia, that it will be a whole show.
No. You have 10 other shows that we just kind of brought out through this one episode,
Yeah, oh my God. But looking at the race element of it, so you mentioned what other shootings are we talking about today?
Yeah, I think how much time do we have? Do we have about 10 minutes? We can do probably one more.
Okay.
I would say the San Jose shooting.
Yeah.
Or the one that we had just recently. That really hits home because some of my friends were 5 miles away from that shooting, and with that one, it was a man who was 57 years old. His name was Samuel Cassidy, and he committed suicide, and it was really the deadliest shooting of the Bay Area ever. And so there were 10 people who died, and it's just really tragic. And it just really, when it hits home that close, then you start realizing that this is not just something that you're seeing on the television anymore. This is something that could happen to any of us at any time. And if we are the person that didn't smile at that person, or if we are the person that didn't take care of ourselves, and those things can come out, because a lot of this in this particular case, it was more about the insubordination, right? The anger towards coworkers for years and years that were not taken care of. And so like, he had like a little criminal history. He did have a love of guns, and so he had like shotguns and rifles and different things like that. And he did get divorced, and there was lots of mental health issues with that. And he was just really tired of working for the VTA and over being looked down upon, or actually having the feeling of being let down. I mean, not having a position where he can have a voice, and he was just completely tired of that. And this is why this happened. And so just wanted to bring that out because it hits home really close. And I used to take the VTA also. And so like, what happens if you go on a VTA and you just fear for your life? And there's just so much that we can unpack with that.
Can you just, for everyone out there listening, we have an international audience. Can you just say what VTA is?
It's the actually forgot what the name of it, but it's a transportation service, in San Jose, California.
Yeah. So
They run buses and light rails.
there we go. There we
I think
go.
it's called Valley Transportation Authority. Yeah, that's really the name of it. Yeah.
Got it. So yeah, so if you get on a public transit bus and all of a sudden there, like there's something going down if you step in, and to be able to just like to know that we've been in those spaces or close to those spaces.
Hmm.
I want to look at what you said about insubordination and like basically cleaning your emotional house. It's really easy to be stuck in resentment and anger and frustration and to kind of like go on thinking, having thoughts of like, oh, this is just another day. I'm in a rut. I'm going to go to this job. I'm going to do this thing. And it doesn't matter how I feel. When you get to the place where it doesn't matter how you feel, that's where the danger starts to creep in around like these hostilities. And that's what I see. I see someone who had a lot of emotional things built up and they weren't present to their emotional space such that it could be such that they could enjoy life. Like really
Yeah.
what it is when you're harboring these negative emotions, these resentments, these things that are going on, to be able to have a positive and empowered life is it's a step, it's a growth, and it can be a long one, that growing process.
Yeah. I mean, how many people actually go out and go to their 9 to 5 job and think it's the greatest thing in the world, um and it gets compounded by, and I'm sure that you and I and Edward have run into a coworker that has not been agreeing with us, or maybe have my last job, I may have had, out of the hundreds of people, I might have had 2 or 3 people that just didn't really like me at all, and didn't want to communicate with me, and actually said, eventually when we talked, we had all this resentment and anger towards each other and the way that we did things, um, and when it comes back to it, down to it, it's actually communication again. He never really took all this. I mean, he might have been angry and expressed it to those people, but he never really processed those feelings, so you can be angry at someone and throw a tantrum, but there's a difference between that and actually talking to someone to actually work it out, whether it's that coworker or a therapist or like your friend. And I know that what really helped me through that time of working through a couple of troublesome coworkers that I had was actually saying what I felt. I actually remember having a conversation with one of my coworkers where I literally was cursing, I was like, I really hate that you treat me this way and everything like that, and F this and F that. But what that did was start to actually like, she never even knew that. Like, and then vice versa, she also had a lot of things to say about me and how I worked and everything like that. But just starting to get it out in the open, we started to actually work through things, um and that was really huge, because I would normally just kind of keep it inside myself and not really talk about it until it boiled over, but for me to be able to do that, that takes a lot of courage, and not only with that in the workplace settings, but just in life, when you have troublesome relationships with people, being able to start to say it and say, hey, what, I want to take the step and actually reach out and work on this with you, because I'm committed to us having a great relationship and a great working relationship at that. So there's a lot to be said about teaching employees that it's okay to, and if you need a mediator to come in and put you guys together and start talking about these issues, rather than allowing it to sit and be a ticking time bomb. That's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said the highlight of the show was like really like not letting those emotions or those places boil over. That ties into each and every conversation we've had about shootings. It's like the temptation, the anger, the rage, the fear, letting these things boil over before we actually get to a point where they can be before they can be managed. Like once they're unmanageable, it's a lot harder to come back off that edge.
Yeah.
Um, this
There's
is
a point of no
incredible.
return. There's a point where it's just like, this is it, and I'm done. you don't want it to ever get to that point, you know. And even if it's just like you bring that person in and you say, you know, like, you know, what you've been through is shitty, you know, and I know your coworkers, they hate you, but somebody to listen to them and actually repeat back to them, like, this is how you feel, and I validate your feelings.
Yes.
Something as simple as that can already take the pressure off, like whatever was been boiling up over time. And there might be crying, there might be anger, there might be rage still, but having that kind of release is huge, because then it won't end up being that energy being put into a bullet, you know, that strikes somebody that they don't even know.
Yeah.
And which is really heartbreaking, because some of those people that were shot not even involved with that situation, you know, those families and the things that happened to them, they had nothing to do with this, you know, and yet they're the ones that suffer, along with the person that has committed the crime is also suffering. So it's just it's just a very tragic, sad event when any of this happens, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Patrick, thank you so much for the work that you do in the world. Before we wrap up, can you share any resources or any other information with the listeners?
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have an organization. It's a fiscally sponsored project called the Holistic Love Neighborhood, and we're all about listening to you and what your needs are, you know, and that you come in with a sense of, hey, like, I'm being listened to, and our miracle angels and our coaches and the community that we've created want to really support you in your journey, you know. And so if we can be that pressure valve release, if we can direct you to the right professional, if we can teach you something about your finances or your health or your mental health or your physical health that can really bring you to the next level of your health and wellness, visit us at our website at holisticloveneighborhood.org. And then we also have our Facebook page at Holistic Love Neighborhood. So just go ahead and go there. We are relaunching in September with a couple of amazing events. We have a growing group of 15 to 20 people that are building some amazing programs. And we want a community space where people can come in and you get a hug, whether it's digital or in person. We're located in San Francisco right now, and we're hoping to expand our future vision, expanding all over the world, creating these blue zone type of communities where people are living their happiest, healthiest, and longest lives, where they support each other in community, where they know each other's needs and can really speak to that and create programs that will support those things. And at the same time, like, ultimately this whole program started because I needed a person to listen to me and a community to surround myself with. So the one thing that we can guarantee in Holistic Love Neighborhood is that we will surround you with a community that cares about you and that wants to really create your happiest life. So definitely visit us at those different places. You could also share my information, Nika, with anybody that's interested, you know, and wants to be part of our team or work on our programs. We have just a phenomenal group of people, and it takes a small group of people to really change the world. So we hope to serve billions and billions of smiles in the next 5 to 10 years, and we can't really wait to see what we can create in the different cities with the different needs, because whether it's finances or fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, whatever, we have the medicines and the things that will be helpful for you to really create that life that you really desire and to really embrace the joy of living again. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much. So that is holisticloveneighborhood.org. And do you want to spell that for us one good time?
Yeah. Holistic Love Neighborhood. HOLISTIC, and then love, LOVE, neighborhood. Um, and yeah, I won't spell it.
They can figure that part out.
.org.
Holisticloveneighborhood.org. Awesome. Thank you so much, Pat, for joining us today.
Absolutely. Loves and kisses and hugs, and yeah, just smile at somebody. If I had one message to give, just the smile makes a difference to everyone's life. So smile at to 3 people every day. Ask them to pass it forward and to pay it forward. Okay.
Awesome. Will do. Will do. And everyone out there listening, please do that too.
Yeah, that makes a difference.
So the ItCast is our community outreach podcast that aims to increase diversity in conversations on health and sexuality. Through this work, we're creating a world where all people feel loved, honored, and respected. Visit us on Patreon to support the ItCast and learn more about our work at theitcast.com. Also, subscribe to the YouTube channel and share with your community. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you back here next week.
Hi.